How many of you have found yourselves needing something right now, and then you click a button on your phone and it appears 10 minutes later? Maybe it's takeout from your favorite place, or a ride to get you home, or a cleaner to deal with the disaster from last night. You can even find someone to put together your IKEA furniture so you don't give up and throw it all away. The on-demand economy has brought us something that seemed like science fiction just a few years ago. Whatever you want, whenever you want it, at the click of a button. It feels like magic, and that's part of the allure. The ease, the simplicity, the efficiency. One click, and there's a kale smoothie at your door, or ice cream, or weed, whatever you prefer. And I don't want to burst your bubble, but these apps haven't quite yet figured out how to magically teleport that kale smoothie to you. And it's okay if that's how you thought that it worked, because the on-demand economy has done a great job of hiding how it all works, which is part of the allure. But behind every order, every time we hit submit, is a cook, a driver, a shopper, or a helper. A person who's working hard to deliver seamlessly what's needed. So we all know that the on-demand economy is changing everything for consumers. What I'd like to talk to you about today, what we don't talk about enough, but I think we need to talk about, is how the on-demand economy is changing everything for workers as well. These simple applications are making life more complex for the very people who power them. How does this work? Let's take a look. This is Maria. Maria started as a freelancer at an Uber-inspired company a few months ago. Her job didn't come with contract or benefits, but the pay seemed decent. She knew she was worth more, but her last job had a relentless schedule and an overbearing boss, and she appreciated the flexibility to schedule around her son's birthday and her mom's appointments. But after the first couple of months, she really began to worry. One time, she logged into her app, and without warning, her pay rate had dropped. There was no explanation and no one to call. Another time, she cleared her schedule to work, but then when she tried to log in, she found herself locked out. Again, no message and no one to call. Maria's working for one of Silicon Valley's hottest tech startups, but she isn't a coder or a graphic designer. She's a house cleaner, dispatched to clean homes through a new on-demand app. When I first heard Maria's story, I wondered to myself, is it true that the more things change, the more they stay the same? I work with the National Domestic Workers Alliance, where we've been hearing the offline version of Maria's story for decades. Our organization is the national voice for the nation's 3 million women who work as domestic workers. They are the nannies who comfort the colicky baby, the caregivers who diffuse the panic attack of a disoriented grandparent, and cleaners like Maria, who keep our homes neat and tidy. Now, since the 1930s, domestic workers have been excluded from virtually every labor law protection that you and I take for granted, including the right to minimum wages, overtime, the ability to form a union, and the right to a weekend. As a result, domestic workers have struggled for decades with issues like pay insecurity, working without contracts, inconsistent hours, and no health care or retirement. The same issues that Maria is facing online and that we will all face as we transition to a freelance and gig economy. But the entrance of Silicon Valley into the invisible and informal world of domestic work is disrupting everything that we know, click by click. Everything that we know about work is changing. Gone are the days of the 9-to-5 and the 40-hour work week. In today's economy, more and more people are working as freelancers, finding work here and finding work there. And in today's economy, young people simply don't expect to get a job. And if they do, they know it won't last for more than a few years. The on-demand economy is just one way in which the notion of a job is changing. And while it's true that it's early and young in its development, I believe it's a very important part of the economy to pay attention to. Let me explain why. Online marketplaces are connecting more and more people to work. Tech capital is pouring into this sector, and much of the glamour and the frenzy is tied to venture capitalists imagining the Uber of anything and the Uber of everything. Futurists in Silicon Valley tell me that they expect the on-demand models of today to evolve into the operating system for labor markets in the future. Now, today, some of the services that you get are mostly provided by lower-wage workers or so-called unskilled laborers. But as this part of the economy grows, so will the range of people it includes. Many of you may already be experiencing this in your professions. You can already use apps to hire architects, massage therapists, and even Harvard-trained physicians. Now, the good news is that if what you do pays well and you can find enough hours, well, then you can lead a flexible life. You can be your own boss and make your own hours. But the bad news is that if what you do doesn't pay well, well, then your life is becoming more precarious and unpredictable. As the entire world moves onto the internet, and all of our human interactions and jobs and businesses become increasingly digitized, I find myself wondering, what does an economy driven by technology look like? Now, at this point in the conversation, things usually devolve into this topic's version of the climate denier debate. And, you've got folks, robots are awesome, no they're not, and then things devolve into a brawl like this. And the truth is, while it's always entertaining to be a part of that debate, I don't actually find it that productive. This is partly because, from where I sit, it's obvious that apps are changing the lives of workers. But it's mostly because I think it's both foolhardy and naive to think that we could stop, or that we should even try to stop, the tide of technological progress. So, if that's the case, if these platforms are making a tectonic shift in the way that we work, and this new way of working is here to stay, then the burning question for me, and I hope for all of you, is who gets to decide the future of the way that we work? Who gets to design this new system? Which voices will shape the rules of the new economy? Is it the delighted consumers? The deep-pocketed investors? The talented engineers? Is it ever the workers? Or is the question, in fact, what is making these decisions? Is it an algorithm? Over the last few years, we have seen companies sort through massive amounts of data to brilliantly solve for efficiency. The fewest clicks to a cleaning, the least number of minutes to get you home from the game, or the cheapest way to find the cheesiest grilled cheese sandwich after midnight. And that's amazing. But what we haven't yet seen is companies effectively solving for equity. What I worry about as I watch domestic workers move out of the shadows and onto the internet is whether their well-being and the well-being of all workers is part of the equation. Some of today's most troubling models only work by driving down wages and eliminating benefits. It's foundational to their design, both from a business perspective and from an ethical perspective. This is fundamentally unsustainable. Yet, none of this is inevitable. It's important to remember that algorithms don't write themselves. People write them. And algorithms don't decide what to optimize for. People decide. So then, which people get to decide how Maria's future will be written? Which people get to decide how the rules for the new economy will work for all of us? Now, to be clear, this isn't about willful inefficiency or being anti-business. Not at all. This is about naming trade-offs and constantly asking ourselves, whose problems is the tech revolution solving? And are we solving more problems than we're creating? Over the last year, I've talked to CEOs and workers, investors and professors. And given the sheer amount of intellectual energy, the ingenuity it took to invent the on-demand economy, I can tell you that I honestly feel optimistic about our ability to answer these questions. But the time to act is now, and the window of opportunity is closing. Technology's ability to rapidly and endlessly scale means that we must, at the heart of these new models, we must write algorithms that work for all of us. Because if we don't, then I fear that technology will codify inequity at a greater pace and scale than we've ever seen before. But it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't. Once every few generations, we have a momentous opportunity to make big decisions, to reset norms and culture, to reinvent ourselves. And while we're starting to see small activity in this part of the economy to do that, what's really missing in this moment is an overarching framework, a set of guiding principles to help us understand how we want the future of work to work. In business and in manufacturing and technology, organizations rely on specifications to establish a set of common standards or language or interoperability. And these specifications often describe what a system should do, not necessarily how a system should do it. I believe that we are at the exact right moment to develop and advance a set of values-based specifications for the new economy. A North Star, a roadmap, a set of guiding principles on how the new economy can work for all of us. What would it mean to have specifications that go beyond efficiency, price, or ease of use? How could we solve for compassion, dignity, or fairness? What would it mean to write algorithms that truly optimize for the way that we treat one another, the way that we connect to one another? And what would it mean to write algorithms that sustain the very people that sustain us? What could such specifications look like? And how do we write them into code? At this point, I don't think we have the answers to these questions. The DNA of the on-demand economy is still being written as we speak. But what I do know is that each and every one of us can and must be a part of shaping the answers to these questions. The beauty of the on-demand economy is that it instantly connects us to the things that we want and need. But the truth is, we've always been connected. Our fates, yours and mine and Maria's, they've always been woven together. And so, if we're changing almost everything that we know about the way that we work in the face of unprecedented technology, let's also rewrite the rules. Let's rewrite the formula for how we decide. And let's finally solve the puzzle of how we use technology to link efficiency and equity. Technology, at its best, can strengthen humanity and our connectedness. Let's write new rules and new operating procedures to do just that. Let's build a sustainable economy that allows each and every one of us to realize our true human potential. Because that, more than any button or app or portal, will be truly transformative. Thank you.